I've been there. It's difficult to get across. But what you want to do in the build up to your race is you want to hopefully you will have done some race simulation stuff and you've trained building up to it. But what you can do in the last week is really kind of overdo things and go into it. It's much better to go into it undertrained than or go into it fresh than to go into it over fatigued. So you can't really build a lot of fitness in those last few days. Anything that you do then will be for like you'll make adaptations for it post race. So the only thing you're going to do in this last week is break down. But what you can do is keep the body ticking over, keep mobile, still get a feel of like what high intensity feels like, and what that race intensity is going to feel like, and but just cut your volume down a lot. So what I do is like for example, we had a question that was like, all right, 5 weeks out, what is the kind of game plan? And like 5 weeks out, I would be starting to do a lot more simulation work. So doing the Hyrox events in that order, the full, getting up to the full volume. And the reason you would do that is twofold. Like I know a lot of, like I go back, I might confuse people by saying, oh, you shouldn't do loads and loads of the Hyrox simulation. You might have heard this from other athletes of not just going over and over the same stuff, but that in contrast to doing running separately and strength separately, as you come into into the race, you want to start to do some simulation work and get a feel of how that is gonna how it's gonna feel put together. So you not only you get a feel for it, but you also can kind of start to see time trial it a little bit and strategize. So sort of from about 8 weeks out, if you're a beginner, or maybe a little bit later if you're more experienced, you're gonna basically start to do the simulations and just basically build up what you're doing. And then 2 to 3 weeks out, I tend to do my biggest amount of volume. So I'll be doing like the full Hyrox simulation, normally 2 or 3 weeks out. And from there, I'm starting to cut down the amount of volume. So 2 weeks out, I'll be still keeping the intensity high, but dropping the amount of volume. So this is where like, yeah, you'll drop the running volume down a bit. And you just basically keep the quality of work. So you'll be working at that threshold. Then on race week, your priority is, yeah, just getting in, get a sweat on, get a feel for that heart rate. So you're around that 85% kind of feel, but stopping almost before you start to feel yourself really fatigued. You should kind of finish those sessions feeling like you could have done more, and you still got a little bit left in the tank. That's when you kind of know, like, yeah, I'm raring to go. I want to do more, but I'm holding back. Rather than like a lot of the time, a common mistake is just smashing out, like, oh, I need to do more, the race is coming up, like trying to do like almost like a full simulation, or doing like hour plus hard grindy work in that week. It is going to it's just going to wear you down, and you're not actually gonna, even if you're used to that, you're not going to perform as well as you would if you was going into it a little bit fresher. Okay, and then the balance is, yeah, but what if I get stiff, or I get tired, or I'm used to moving? Then going on walks, like light runs, and swims, doing some light cardio is fine, as long as it's like really like almost zone 1, zone 2. And then the only sort of running that I'll do one session where I do some Hyrox specific running. So basically it'll be doing my 1 kilometer runs at the Hyrox pace that I wanna hit, with about 30 seconds to a minute in between, and I'm trying to practice what that pace feels like. So I'm doing it outside, trying to find an area like a flat running surface that you're not going to be obstructed, and don't look at your watch until you finish the kilometer. So you do the kilometer, then you check what was that pace. Take 30 seconds, do it again. Can you match it, or can you get close to it? And that way you're yourself feeling what that pace is like, because on race day you're not going to have like a treadmill monitor in front of you, and also the watches aren't even that reliable with GPS and things like that. So you want to get a feel of what that pace is. So that's the goal of that session. It's not to improve your fitness, it's to get a better understanding of your running. So that's why I would include that session. The other thing, you can do some sled work, you can do some erg work, as I say, like getting up to that high intensity and then backing off before you start to feel yourself over fatigue or really break down. And that's where like the sleds and the machines can be quite useful. I would avoid doing too much of lunges or wall balls, even farmer carries, because it's the eccentric loading that starts to, so basically like the way down when you're lunging, the controlling that way down is what really breaks the muscle tissue down, and that's what makes you sore. So lunges and wall balls make you a lot more sore than like sled pushes. So that's where, yeah, you can utilize the sled instead of lunges and wall balls. We will get on to some food. So we've got a couple of questions in the chat now. They're coming in. So we've got racing in London, nice. So food to eat before race day. So in that race week, if we work our way back, I don't tend to change my nutrition too much in the week of my race. But what happens is, because I'm decreasing my amount of volume and I'm eating the same, I'm sort of in a natural surplus, and that also means I'm basically carb loading without eating more carbs, because often another little mistake is, need a carb load, smash loads of carbs, you get really inflamed, you feel kind of crappy, and then race day comes in, your body just doesn't want to, or if it's not used to that, it's not going to respond well to it. So sticking to what you're used to, not trying to change too much, is always a good way to go. And then basically, so I will have some carbohydrates the night before, making sure that that's in the meal, but I keep it well balanced. So I'll have some proteins, I'll have a little bit of fat, mostly some complex carbohydrates. And then the day of, it depends on when your race time is, but if we work back from our race, normally 2 to 3 if you can, is when you'd have your last meal. Sometimes a little bit earlier, particularly if it's later on in the day and you have the time. I tend to like it 3 to 4 hours before racing, and that will kind of allow you to process it a little bit before, so you're not running on a full stomach. And that meal would be carbohydrates, so simple, easy to digest. Doesn't have to be so things like bread, bananas, oats, soft foods that tend to be nice on the stomach. Trying to avoid too much fat because that will slow your digestive system down, and you're going to be using mostly glycogen in your race. And then before that, like, so say if my race was at, well, for example, what's quite difficult is my race is in the evenings. Normally in the evenings, I'm doing the pro race on Saturday. So 3 to 4 hours before that, I would have some oats. I normally make some overnight oats and prep that beforehand. Easy to take with me. I can smash that wherever I am. And then in the morning, I might have like some eggs on toast. Again, I'm getting some protein in, but it's very simple, easy to digest, rather than like, you know, a load of chicken, red meat, or something like that. And yeah, that would kind of suit me going into the race. And then I would have some more simple carbohydrates and liquid form. So it might be Lucozade, Gatorade, or any carbohydrate drink. I would have probably 1 to 2 hours before. You don't want it like directly before, because what can happen is you get this like insulin response where your blood sugar rises, so your body tries to bring it back down, and then as it's bringing it back down, that's when you, like, if you go to race at that point, then you can kind of have this interference, like kind of like an interference effect, but like your body's trying to bring the blood sugar down when actually you need it up. So that can kind of be a bit of an issue for some people. So what you want is making sure that you like had all your carbohydrates a good sort of hour before, and then you can have a gel, or you can have any sort of nutrition that you're having during your race once you get started, basically, not like directly before. Okay, and so that's kind of food wise. With your like hydration, what we want to do is make sure we're super hydrated. The key to that is like intramuscular hydration. So making sure that we're taking on some electrolytes, because that will help you to retain the water and actually use it. So and rather than like just drinking loads and loads of water, you actually flush out the system. So starting to increase that, you can increase that like 2 days before, and maintain that throughout. But what you don't want to do is just try and take on loads of water the day of, because you end up you either end up overhydrating, which is another issue, but quite oftentimes you'll just basically urinate more, so you can actually end up losing too much fluid there. Cool, let's get to some of the questions, because I'm seeing some come in. What would you watch as a horror film before Hyrox race day? You know what, I'm not a big horror fan, but you know, you do you. Whatever gets you in the mood at the yeah. I mean, Hyrox is horrific enough for me. Tips to get better at wall balls. I can do unbroken in training, but in race they always take me 5 minutes. Okay, so wall balls, wall ball training. If, yeah, like you say, if you can get them in training, but you can't get them in your race, it's likely going to be one of two things. Basically, either it's an energy system in terms of like an endurance thing. So basically, you're just depleted at that point, so you can't string together your full set, or it's a heart rate thing. So you're going into it at a much higher heart rate, and you can't bring that heart rate down whilst you're doing your reps, or it's just basically going up and up and up until you need to break in order to relieve that, basically. And that can be a case because of the conditions of your race day, you know, you're pushing that much harder. I don't know whether you mean like in training you can hit them like within a simulation, or you're doing them fresh, or that sort of thing. But basically, you can, in order to work on that, you need to basically just improve your cardiovascular in order to be going into the in order to either be able to bring your heart rate down or keep it stable whilst doing warbles, or what works for a lot of people, and you know, I picked this up from Graham Halliday actually, is you decrease your run a little bit going into the warbles so that you're coming in with a lower heart rate, and therefore you kind of it's basically like a strategy in order to save yourself a little bit of energy and dedicate that to the warbles. This works particularly well if you aren't a strong runner, but you and you spend a lot of time on the warbles. So the where you can make up time basically is if the warbles, they tend to take people they're very dispersed in terms of like the people that take a long time take a really long time, and the people that take a short time are quite short. So you can make up a lot of time on warbles. So particularly, yeah, if you know that, yeah, I can do them unbroken in training, I just need to ease off a little bit and trust that I can make up that time by taking less breaks. So hopefully that makes sense. What else have we got? Can you do the 1 kilometer runs on race week on an athletics track? Yeah, absolutely, you could do that on an athletics track, and that would work quite well in terms of feeling out that pace. Obviously, it's going to be a little bit different on your race day. There's no way that you can simulate it exactly. You're going to have crowds of people, and that's, you know, going in and out corners and that sort of thing. You know, expect it to be a little bit slower, and obviously we never quite know what the exact distance of the laps are, because their Hyrox say, you know, 8.7 is the total that you run in terms of all your laps plus the rock zone should equal 8.7, but that can be, you know, the first lap is normally short. So for example, let's bring up, I've got it up here somewhere, the Birmingham race day map, because, you know, for those of you that are doing Birmingham, here we go, hopefully you can see that. So the Birmingham lap, the layout is as shows. It's the first lap is what is it, 2.3. Actually got this on a tiny little thing, so I can't even see it, but yeah, let me bring it up. Yeah, so the race map, 2.3 on the first one, and then 1.8 on the others. So you might be thinking, like, this is the tricky bit, is like, how do I pace that accordingly? So you can either do the math ahead of time, but you basically, you want to know what that run feels like. Obviously everyone goes out too fast, so that first lap or the first run, you're just feeling it out. You're just feeling out what you know, holding some back in reserve, letting the people that are flying out fly out. Stay relaxed. You know, it's your it's the only run where you're not compromised, so, you know, make the most of it, but really not trying to set any records. And then and then obviously the others is 1.8, so you're going like around it's quite nice because it's basically 2 laps, so you come out, you do 2, but you're going in just before the exit, basically the way you went out, so it's only a tiny bit before. Okay, but obviously different courses will have different layouts, so that can take effect in terms of if you don't expect to hit your paces bang on, go based on feel, and if it is 20, like, you know, 10 to 20 seconds off, that might be all right. And you, the way that you should be able to kind of, the way that I do it is, right, first lap, just feeling it out. First run, I'm just feeling it out. Then the second, third, fourth, fifth, like I'm starting to get a gauge of what sort of time I should be doing. So you should start to find a consistent time, and then it's sticking to that as you go. So that those runs 2 through to 7 should be much more similar. And again, hold back until you get past the sleds. Don't start to like really push it, because as we know, those sleds can feel very different depending on where you are. Let's see, any other questions? What's the best way to train compromise running without actually doing compromise running? So, I mean, there's this big debate on like, is compromise running even a thing? Like when Hyrox first came out, everyone's like, yeah, you need to get better at compromise running. And now there's kind of been this swing the other way of you just need to get better at running. Like it's just running. That's the difference. And to that, I mean, it's true in terms of getting better at running will always help your compromise running as well. But the compromise running is more just like what we were saying, a feeling, and it's knowing what pace you can hold, and that in order to sustain that. So basically, for example, when you're coming off of a sled, and actually this was another question, was like how to, like, someone was what was it? Let me just get it up. Small guy struggling to run post sleds. I don't think it's because you're a small guy. Like everyone struggles to run post sleds, but basically, if you that feeling that you get when you're running after the sleds is kind of what people call that compromise running. It's basically it feels like your body's telling you, I can't do this, I need to slow down. But actually, there is a pace that you can hold where it doesn't get worse, and actually it eventually gets better. So trying to hit that pace and trying to get back into your cadence, get back into that running stride, and just know it, and have that confidence that it will come back, is what you want. And that's a fine line, and that takes some level of practice and feeling it out. So what I would do, I mean, I know, so two different answers. One, to get better at compromise running, you would do the station or whatever exercises beforehand. You would run, and you would try and run the fastest pace that you can do whilst feeling like you've recovered by the end of that kilometer, because that's the whole thing, is if you go too fast, you just won't recover. You especially like things like coming off of the burpees, your heart rate's going to be elevated. If you then just try and hit it as fast as you can, your heart rate will just keep going up, and then you'll crash. So those of you that say there's no such thing as compromise running, it's a feeling. Like, so you definitely feel different running off of different exercises, and it's getting used to how this feels, like knowing that it will pass, and kind of being at peace with that a little bit. And some of the best guys will come off of the stations and just hammer, and just know that it's going to suck for a good minute or two, and then it will come back. In terms of getting better at compromise running without actually doing compromise running, it would just be like hitting like high threshold run, because effectively what's happening in a lot of the exercises is it's taxing your body in a different way, which will create a heart rate response. Not on a lot of them that will elevate your heart rate. Some of them your heart rate will be lower than it will be when you're running. Things like the slower ones like sled pull, some of those are a lot more muscular than they are cardiovascular. But anyway, on a lot of those, your heart rate will be elevated going into the run, and then you basically bring it down a little bit on the run. But yeah, most of the time your heart rate will be at that kind of threshold, so 85%. For those of you that asked what's a target heart rate zone for race day, mostly you'll be 80 to 90%. Hopefully you would be a little more closer to the 80% at the beginning and a little more towards the 90% towards the end. But that being said, I wouldn't rely too heavily on heart rate monitors and checking your heart rate during your race, because there's so many factors that can influence your heart rate. Biggest one being like adrenaline and just this situation of your race day. Your heart rate will be elevated. Like if you check your heart rate before you start your race, you haven't done anything, it's going to be way higher than it will be in training, unless you are like super zen mode. But yeah, anytime I check my heart rate before I start racing, I'm already in like zone 2 and I'm standing still. So you can't completely rely on it. But yeah, go based on feel, and you might want to take a check at it after and use that data to kind of predict or see where you might have spiked and dipped. That can be pretty useful. Okay, I think that answered most of the questions. Let's check what we had from Instagram. We had shoe question. So shoes, I struggle to answer shoes, mostly because I know it's so personal. But what I will say, instead of giving you like specific models and brands, I will give you like what to look for in shoes, and then therefore you can kind of take a pick and use your best brands or your favorite ones, and just find a model that works. Because so what you're looking for is a shoe that has, so firstly, if we start with like the sole, your grip, it needs to be like rubbery, tacky tends to be the best in terms of not having like like the trail lugs. You might think, oh, that's great, like they've got really good grip, but it doesn't work very well on the surfaces that you're on in Hyrox. So because of it's normally on like a polished floor, basically concrete, and it's kind of got that coating. Sometimes it's a bit dusty as well. You want max surface area in contact with the ground. So like flat tacky rubber works really well, and that works well on your carpets for your sled push as well. So maximum coverage, I know like Hoka, they've got a bit better, but a lot of the time it's like a lot of it is that soft foam on the bottom, and there's only like touches of rubber, I think, to make it lighter. It can be less traction basically with that. So good ones for that are Brooks. I race in a pair of Brooks, actually. Let me show you. So here, and these are a bit worn out to be fair, but like this would be your sort of soft foam, and this is like your rubber coating over the top. So you can see like it covers a lot of the shoe. So things like where I'm pushing and pulling, particularly on the sled pull, you get a lot more traction. The moving up, so like your midsole, then you want to look for something that is comfortable enough to run it in terms of support, like obviously you're going to be running hard, so minimal shoes can be a little bit higher impact. So you need to, if you're going to use those, you need to be used to using those, but sometimes you want a little bit more spring to kind of propel you forward. You can use carbon plates, but and definitely some athletes do, that you're kind of finding a lot of the elites are using them, but they might not necessarily be the like the alpha flies or the vapor flies. They're like versions of that are similar, but a little bit more stable, because obviously the thing with a carbon plate is they might be great, but they was designed to run in pretty much a straight line, and obviously you've got a lot of turns. They are quite unstable as a shoe, and then like when you go into things like lunges, farmer carries and wall balls, you can easily be sort of tipped off, and your foot will be like working really hard to stabilize it, and it'd be quite hard on the ankles. But again, it's still personal preference. If you feel that you can do it well in those, then by all means go for it. And then the upper, this is quite a big one, is like you want this kind of to have a little bit of structure. So some of the shoes that I've used before that are like super lightweight, and they kind of just got like a sock, like cloth upper. When you're doing things like the sled pull, and your feet kind of shoot towards the front, or they kind of push over the sides of the sole, and that can be not so good. And the same with the push. You can see this is like the heel's got a little bit of structure to it. So when you're pushing, you don't want your heel slipping out the back. So obviously things like I know New Balance, like they often have this funky kind of heel that sometimes it's really easy to slip out the back of. But yeah, I mean Puma have started to kind of do these Hyrox specific shoes. They don't say they're Hyrox specific, but a lot of they're the brand sponsor, and a lot of the elites will be using those as well. So do your research a little bit, but those are kind of things you're looking for: grippy sole, a comfortable midsole for you, so whatever stack height that might be, and then a semi-structured upper so that you're stable in that. Okay, cool. I think that was all of the questions. Let me know if you have any more, and as always, like you can always reach out to me, like if you think of any questions and you want to put them, just reach out to me on Instagram at Woodsy Workout. I quite often put up like, do you have any questions? But you don't have to wait until then. You can just DM me. I will be doing live streams every Tuesday, live at 5. And I will be racing in Birmingham on Saturday in the evening. So I thought it was Friday, but it's Saturday. So Saturday I'm racing at 20 to 8 in the men's pro. If you're there, come and say hey. I also have a few goodies that I'm giving out. So we got some nice race patches. We got the old the Woodsy Workout patch is out now. So if you want to get your hands on those, make sure you are subscribed. Make sure you follow me, and then come and say hey. Come and grab a pic. Come and grab a patch. And I'll also be giving out a couple of the Hyrox Race Ready programs. So if you've got a race coming up, or you want a little bit more of a structured plan, the Hyrox Race Ready program, it is an 8-week program that takes you all the way up to your race and prepares you in the best possible way. So you can find that on coactiveperformance.com. And anything else, you can reach me on Instagram at Woodsy Workout. I will hopefully see you in Birmingham. Good luck for everyone that is racing this weekend or